To Dip a Toe. Welcome to the Dip a Toe Show, where we dive into the exciting world of crypto and blockchain. I'm Melissa, and today we're thrilled to have T's Crypto Spot, an IT security expert with the Department of Defense and a passionate voice in the crypto community. He's here to share his insights on XRP and the tech reshaping the global finance. It's going to be an interesting show, Simon.
Yes, it is, Melissa. I'm pumped to dig into T's military tech expertise and his take on how XRP and blockchain are transforming the financial world. From secured systems to the future of money, we're covering it all today. So let's get started. Let's dip that toe.
Let's go. Welcome to Dip a Toe. How you doing, Simon?
I am doing fabulous as always for another beautiful hump day.
Mm-hmm. It's Wednesday. It's not so hot here today, so I'm really happy about that. I still have 3 fans pointing at me though, but
we had rain. We had rain today.
Yeah,
rain. Yeah, all day. Rain. So winter's coming, everybody. That's coming from the West Coast. The rain is on the way. Get ready. It's coming.
All right. Yeah.
Summer's over.
Man, we've got 42 people in here already. I knew this was going to be an exciting show for people. Just chomping at the bit. Welcome, guys. If you're either listening on Twitter, you're watching on Twitter, you're watching on Twitch or Rumble or YouTube. We highly encourage you to please go over to YouTube. At Dip a Toe is our channel. Subscribe, help our channel grow, and join us in the live chat over there. I'm sure a lot of you have a lot of questions for T's. As you know, Dip a Toe show style, we have a lot of our own questions, and it's likely that many of our questions are some of the same ones that you have. But before we introduce our guest, I want to give a shout out to those of you in the chat already. We had Silver Days hot on the trail, like right off the bat, and then of course we had Miss Beautiful Kita is in the house today. Thank you. We also, Simon, have a brand new born again Carlos is a YouTube member of our Dip a Toe channel. So shout out to you. And of course, we have Lloyd and Optimistic Prime became members last episode.
I'm pretty sure I know that fine gentleman right there, Mr. Born Again Carlos.
Well,
I believe he's in the Texas. Yeah, that's a really good dude right there. Really good dude. Yeah,
well,
real good dude right there.
We sure do appreciate it. Our friend MM says, "Good day, beautiful peeps." We've got Swizzled, where are you at? Swizzled Out Trends says, hey, this is a new friend I've met on X. I've been kind of chatting back and forth with. Looking forward to getting to know Swizzled Out Trends. Crypto OG's in the house, and Miss Becky Forbes. says hello. 589 Chicken. I think Tease might know who that is, so that's pretty exciting. ISO Lab 7 is in the house. Miss Kita, thank you, Kita. Gave us a super sticker. You guys are fantastic.
Amazing. Thank you.
DCA Crypto. Dave is in the house. Who else do we have? Queen of the Nile, who's got an NFT made of herself. I just found out, so we're going to learn more about that in the future. And Mr. Zam, our wonderful friend, Mr.
Love Mr. Zam.
You guys, we got 59 of you in the house. If you'd please share this out, we would really appreciate it. We're trying to get our channel up to 1,000 subscribers, and it's been a long road, but we are diligent about being organic. No bots, no paid for watchers here on the Dip-O-Toe Show. Well, Simon, tonight we've got T's Crypto Spot. And as I said in the intro, he's a seasoned IT security professional with the Department of Defense experience, and he's a passionate voice in the cryptocurrency space.
100%.
He's well known for his sharp insights on XRP and the future of decentralized finance. Tease not only brings a unique blend of his military-grade tech expertise and forward-thinking perspectives on blockchain innovation, he also has an incredible knack for explaining things in an easy-to-understand way and often provokes folks to think about things that weren't on your radar. I know he's brought up a lot of subjects that weren't on my radar and got me to ask more questions. So have your pencils ready, guys. We're about to be educated. If you guys have any questions for T, be sure to watch us on the YouTube. Like I said, join us in the live chat. Give us a follow. Join us in the live chat, and put your questions in all caps, because it'll be a lot easier for us to find your questions. So without further ado, what do you say we get our special guest in here, Simon?
Yeah, let's bring him up, Mr. T. Welcome to the Dip-O-Toe Show.
What's up?
How you doing?
Thank you for having me.
We are super excited to have you. You're a well-respected member of the community, not only in the XRP community, just in the blockchain tech space in general. There's a lot of people that look to your expertise and commentary on certain things, and so we are blessed to have you on the show. Can you give our audience a quick intro, kind of like who you are, what got you into the crypto space to begin with?
So you guys know me, I'm T. I've been in IT for a while. I've worked in multiple facets. You guys are way too kind calling me an expert. I do what I can. The cool thing about IT, though, is that it's always evolving. And because I've had different roles, I've seen quite a bit. I won't lie, the role that I have now is pretty challenging because it's a different environment than what I've been in previously. But just like the blockchain space, things constantly change and constantly evolve. And that's what attracted me to blockchain in general. I got my start doing financial content back in 2017, 2018 timeframe. I used to do a lot of content centered around Palantir. It was probably one of my favorite investments and still is. That was years ago. I remember when Palantir was ranging in between $4 to $8. And, I was, telling people, screaming from the hills, jump in this, and giving breakdowns from a technological perspective about what Palantir did, my familiarity with it, the Gotham software that was already being used by DoD, mainly the Department of the Army. And I mean, look what it's evolved into now. For me, me and a buddy of mine named Kurt, who I'm sure everyone is familiar with in the space, we did a lot of content together. We're friends. off and online. And one of the things that he said that resonated with me was, for the first time, we're in an asset class where you are essentially acting as an accredited investor regarding private equity, where you can get a hold of something that's extremely undervalued prior to it giving you some massive returns. And that's what attracted me to crypto. I respect all other vehicles for investments. But with crypto, it seems to be one of the few places where you can get in on something from the ground floor and it's actually of quality, right? Not saying there's not a lot of scams out there, because there are, right? Just like in the stock world, everyone has the next best penny stock on the horizon, and people are clamoring to find that. But in crypto, I feel like it's a lot easier if you're willing to do the research and connect the dots properly, to see what has that institutional interest and a potential for massive prospective demand in the future. So that's what got me. And plus, I'm in IT. So with me being in IT, I was naturally going to gravitate towards an investment space that spoke the same language that I did, and so that's how I got involved with blockchain. I'm excited to do my best to convey information to others, and hopefully I'm right more than I'm wrong.
What provoked you to I think I found you on Facebook first, and then I found you on Twitter when Twitter Spaces really became popular. I stumbled upon your YouTube, and so you've been on Facebook, YouTube, and X. I'm curious what you're a busy man. There's a lot going on. What inspired you to create a channel in the first place and start talking about this? Like, did you feel like there was a need for someone with your voice to share this information out?
Well, I want to start off by saying there's already plenty of voices in the community. So I didn't think my voice in particular was really that special. I'm going to be 100% honest. And I'm not trying to down talk myself. But there were other people covering content, but there weren't many content creators that were in the IT space, right? So what inspired me on Facebook to start doing random lives at parks was the lawsuit, believe it or not. I knew when I did my research into XRP, and not just XRP, other utility driven assets that were designed, I don't want to say necessarily to solve problems or inefficiencies, but to provide value in certain realms regarding integration with traditional legacy systems. Right. Because you can get into a whole argument about, well, what problems exist, and then you'll be fighting about the inefficiencies that actually exist in public blockchain infrastructure versus traditional legacy system databases and systems in general. And that's a whole different rabbit hole, right? But what I do understand outside of tech is human behavior and psychology. I know what makes people tick, and I know why people make some of the decisions that they make. And I understood when I saw the lawsuit being implemented against Ripple and XRP, that the psychology of man was going to win if someone with common sense didn't step up and translate what was going on and how the tech would correlate with prospective or potential demand in the future, which would ultimately lead to utility assets appreciating in value and price, right? Because value and price are two totally different things. I want to square that away now. But with that being said, in layman's terms, I knew people were going to freak out, when they saw the lawsuit and it dropped all the way to 18 cents. And I said, I got to say something. So I started just doing random lives and the XRP is the future group. Shout out to Panos Mekris. He's a well-known developer. That same group is where I met Kurt at, and Kurt started hopping on lives with me, and we started going down these rabbit holes together. And we've had dialogue with Panos as well. And so that kind of became our safe space to just kind of vent and get out, our frustrations with what we were seeing, and to let people know, don't lose hope. Yeah, I get it. It's at 18 cents now. The big bad SEC has come after this company and the technology that they're leveraging. You don't have anything to worry about regarding them or any of these correspondent banking giants in the future. Hold on. And that was the sole message that I was trying to get out to the general public. Just hold on. And here's why you need to hold on. And I mean, if you jumped in during the Facebook days when it was at 18 to 35 cents, and now it's sitting at right below $3, I think. I mean, if you accumulate it properly, you made out pretty well, So, yeah,
you know what, T? This is why your voice was really important. And, I was speaking for myself, saying your voice it was so important, and you're an incredibly humble person. But you coming along during the distraction, which was the lawsuit, okay, and that deterred a lot of people. I know a lot of smart people that actually had money that refrained from dipping their toe into XRP because of that lawsuit, and they got caught up in all of the the politics of it, the battle between Ethereum and Ripple, and, all of those different rabbit holes that they attempted to take everybody down. And then there was your voice, you and Kurt, talking about the technology and the difference that this was going to make, the protocols, and, all of the important stuff that is the XRP ledger and the interoperability that's going to come from it. And so you gave people something to think about outside of what they wanted us to focus on. And, those of us that gave it our attention were rewarded, not only with knowledge, but also, like you say, you got into something when everybody else was swimming away from it. We were salmon swimming the wrong way down the stream or up the stream, And so, yeah, I think, yes, your voice was very important. And no, there weren't a lot of people out there talking in the way that you were about even the lawsuit in general, and what the implications of it really meant. And, so I know that there's several people in here. Now we have 103 people in here watching that are incredibly thankful for the time and effort that you've taken to educate people and have an open discussion. And so hats off to you and Kurt again. You currently work with the DoD, is that correct? Department of Defense in some form or fashion, in IT security. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, and I mean, and this is important. One thing I've noticed, guys, is that in crypto and blockchain, no matter whether you're into Bitcoin or XRP or Ethereum or Solana, it doesn't matter. There are so many people that are either current military or previous military, or have some kind of military experience. And I always think it's because you guys are critical thinkers, right? You don't do what you do without being a critical thinker, and kind of being taught to see the bigger picture. And so that was another reason why, whenever I hear some of these folks that have prior military experience or they're currently in the military, I respect that. Just because of, not saying all of you guys are like, the smartest in their room, but you definitely have a different perspective than a lot of us do. And so 100%. I'm wondering how your military tech experience shaped your understanding of like the secure systems like blockchain. because you could probably see that before a lot of us could really understand what that meant,
Well, I mean, you got to look at blockchain for what it is. It's an accounting mechanism, distributed ledger technology, serves that purpose. And I think my experience in IT helped me out with my perspective on blockchain from an interoperability standpoint, right? When you're dealing in enterprise environments with IT or even standalone environments, one of the things that you're going to have to catch on to pretty quickly is how things interoperate with one another. Like, for example, let's say, and I'm trying to think of a user-friendly example here. Something as simple as, let's say and this is in no way, shape, or form reflective of what I'm currently doing. This is just for entertainment purposes, and this is not reflective of any government or intelligence agencies, but I'm just going to give a hypothetical example. You're in a standalone environment, right? Which means that on that network, you can't get out to the internet normally, right? But there are devices or interfaces, I should say, that are attached to certain devices that have IP addresses associated with them, right? Now, let's say you have a machine and this network is classified and the machine is your laptop, right? And you want to get, let's say on a network, you have a phone or an intercom of some sort that's programmed into your network and you want to get out to it, right? Well, I don't have traditional internet here, so what do? Well, let's say you have a Cisco switch in there. You plug into the port, right? And you plug into your console port with your console cable, and you go into the PuTTY application, and you go into your interface, and you program a port essentially by, doing a no shut and a few other things, right? You got to swap your VLAN over because the website that you may want to get to or interface has an IP, and the IP and the third octet in the IP determines what network the device is going to be on. So you have to make sure you configure that port to that network, right? Now, what I'm describing here is a form of interop, because not only do you have to do that, you also have to go into your machine's group policy settings and configure it regarding the TLS SSL settings to match what you need it to match so that you can get into that website, right? So you have PuTTY, which is attached to Cisco. You have your machine's IPv4 settings, which you have to configure, default gateway, your IP address, etc. And then you have your group policy settings in the machine that you have to configure as well, right? And then once you do those three things that interoperate with one another, you can get out to that interface, right? So that's just a bare bones basic example of how there are multiple systems or applications within a machine that work with one another. Obviously, you're doing the work to get you to your desired goal, right? Which would be that web interface. Okay. This is no different from looking at communicative layers and abilities regarding a blockchain based environment, right? When you start talking about how these protocols are even going to communicate with one another, when you start talking about things like CCIP, right? When you start talking about OS-based platforms that can connect enterprises to their desired networks, right? Outside of just an Oracle or secure data exchange perspective, right? So looking at those type of things in IT, and I could go down the list of a ton of other things that I've experienced where you have 5 to 6 different things that have to be aligned properly in order for this thing over here to work, right? You see, I mean, that's literally what IT is about. So when I'm looking at this ecosystem regarding blockchain and all I see is interoperability, it's like, oh, this is cool. So I kind of get this, right? And I work with this. So let's dive into it. And then, I try to do my best And sometimes I fumble. Sometimes I'm not the best at translating, but I do my best. And I'll be 100% honest. I think being in this community, I think a lot of other bright minds, who may not be the biggest influencers in the world, just regular people who even hop up on stage and spaces with me, have helped me learn to use analogies. Even Kurt, guys like CB and Chico and Chris Bennett, that's CB, Outlaw, Kevin, our little group that we have, even Crypto 901, these guys have, helped me along with others in the space with using analogies and being more simplistic in how I convey this information to others. So I'm thankful for the entire space. I'm growing and I'm learning with everyone. And I know sometimes it may not feel like that, but I am, right? And I'm not ashamed to say that I think that's what we all should be doing here, is learning from one another. So yeah.
Well, and asking those questions, having people ask you questions, it helps you become a better teacher, right? Whenever you start explaining something, and then you get a pushback question, it helps you to explain it further. And like I said with our Dip a Toe folks, it's all of the people that say, "Oh, I could never come on Dip a Toe. I have nothing to say. I don't know anything about crypto." And I say, you're the most important people, because you're asking the questions that a lot of us, the further down the road we get, we forget that we know these things already, and we assume that others know these things, right? And so I think it's great that you have people that are in your circle that push you to be able to answer those questions, and it shows. Because you are a very well-rounded person, and I've heard you many times where you might have not explained something fully, or someone misunderstood what you were saying, and you come back around and explain it in a different way so that it's more clear. And that's the best that we can do, right? Be willing to evolve as we're learning and growing, and we see new things become implemented in the system. So I know that you have earned multiple IT certifications or certifications. Can you share the ones that you hold, and have they had an influence on your perspective on the digital asset space in general?
Sure. So I passed my CISSP, Certified Information System Security Professional. I have my CISM, which is actually a step above that. A lot of people don't know that, but that's the Certified Information Security Manager. I have the CompTIA Advanced Security Practitioner. I have the CYSA Plus, which is a cybersecurity analyst certification. I have the pen test, which is penetration testing. I have Security Plus. I have Vindicator, VCC, and IDS, intrusion detection system. I also have blockchain certifications as well. I'm fully R3 certified. And I have a blockchain business model certification from Duke University. And what other certs do I have? Oh yeah, I have an associate's and a bachelor's in IT management, and I'm almost done with my master's in cybersecurity and information assurance. Like literally, like 60% done. I'll probably be done next month sometime. So yeah, I've got a few letters under my name, but I'll be 100% honest. I keep it real. I'm just look, I'm not saying I'm not smart, but you got people with certs who don't know any of that content, right? They can't tell you what the CIA triad is, and tell you what deduplication is, and how it would tie in with reduction of archived data. They can't tell you about incident response or governance, or, you know. And so there's, I'm like I said, I'm gonna be honest. Part of the reason I have a good portion of some of the certs I mentioned is because they're covered in my master's program. So if you go and look at my curriculum for my degree, 5 of those certs are in that curriculum, right? So, I mean, Sec Plus I've had for ages, but the more advanced security-based certifications are part of that degree. So I wouldn't say the certs helped me professionally, but what I will say is my experience and study habits helped me get the certs, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, like I said, you know, you got fools out here with, you know, PhDs. It just depends on the person, and it depends on why they're pursuing their education and what they plan on doing with it. You know, for me, I use my education towards my job, you know, towards what I'm doing, especially since, you know, it's a different environment, like I mentioned beforehand, than what I've typically dealt with. You know, going through the curriculum that I'm going through and going through some of the certs I've been through have helped me, you know, further understand, you know, some of the infrastructure and differences in culture that I'm seeing in a highly cyber infosec based environment versus your run of the mill enterprise IT environment. And that's not putting enterprise down at all, right? I made my bones working in enterprise environments, but it's very pigeon-held, right? Like you get to an enterprise environment, you don't have to know a ton of information. You just have to be good at specific things, right? The environment that I'm in now, you know, it's like, hey, you know how to administer or manage an Oracle database? No, you're going to learn. Hey, how well do you know Cisco or Pragma? You're going to learn. Hey, do you know Veritas? Hey, do you know SolarWinds? Hey, do you know this system? Hey, do you know that system? Hey, have you dealt with these components? Do you know how these things talk? Hey, like it, you know, so anything that I can learn education wise that's going to correlate with what I'm dealing with currently, I go after, right? And blockchain, believe it or not, even though it's different in some ways than what I'm working with now, helps, right, from an interoperability perspective, because when you're training your mind to constantly look for relationships between systems, applications, and other mechanisms, you're going to do it at work as well, right? And it's going to be easier to kind of paint that picture for yourself as to how everything interconnects in your ecosystem. So, yeah, all of it correlates. And, you know, like I said, I a lot of the knowledge that I had previously from other environments, I applied it towards my certifications and degree. And I won't lie, going to school has helped as well. You know, having a bachelor's in IT management, centered around, well, the concentration was in cybersecurity management, helped out a great deal. So yeah, like I said, you just got to be doing it for the right reasons, and you got to have a desire to learn and be passionate about it. So I'm thankful that I did it.
You know, that's you're what you're sharing with us right there, T, is really awesome, and a huge for those that don't know you or have never seen you or heard you before, sharing that with this audience and the world, as you have a few times before, I'm sure. Your in my opinion, your creed, what you're talking about there, your core creed is learning the business, the whole business, versus someone that got a certification to be in the business. You are the business, right? And there's a difference there. And I really want to highlight this because it applies to when those of us in this space, we say it, or we've heard it, and we have yet to say it. And that is, do your own research.
Yeah.
Okay. What we mean there is really get into this business, be into crypto. And you're giving I mean, that's awesome. You got into it not just, okay, hey, I did this and I got my job and now I'm here. I'm here, but you're in it. And there's a huge difference there that obviously it goes overlooked in so many different industries. My background is construction. It's either the business and you're about not just your system, but other people's systems, trades, etc., what they have to do, why they have to do it, is that rated, is that not rated, etc. Right? We have to know their stuff in order to do our stuff, and vice versa. If we're not in the building business, if we're not into it, and we're just there, we're not going to make it. It's not going to work, right? And that's what I see with you. And I just wanted to highlight that, because that characteristic that you bring to this space is very sought after. We're drawn to individuals like yourself that goes, wow, he knows this stuff. It's like, well, you're saying, hey, I don't know everything, but I'm in it. I'm not just here. And there's a huge difference.
You're someone who's in it, and not only are you in it, you continue to educate yourself. You continue to push forward, which is what all of us are doing as we're learning. We're dipping our toes into this, crypto and blockchain space and trying to educate ourselves the best we can, and realize there is no stopping point, right? That things evolve. There's challenges that come up, and by you continuing to push forward and educate yourself on all of these things. It's a great example for others, but it's definitely shows like who you are as a person. Being diligent. I wonder, because you work in an environment like the Department of Defense, which I would think would be, it's kind of a high stakes thing. Like I would think it's a very secure type job. What parallels do you see between, the military grade tech security challenges that you have and securing the decentralized financial systems that they're building now? Is there a similarity there that you see?
Yeah, Melissa, that's just a small question. Thank you.
Well, you know what? That's a tough one, right? That all depends on what type of environment you're working in regarding enterprise or standalone environments, because there's different mechanisms at play. As far as implementing security on a blockchain, like I said, that's a totally different conversation. In your traditional network, obviously you're going to have firewalls, you're going to have tools like Splunk, you're going to have vulnerability scanners for your network, like ACAS. Back in the day, I think it was Retina we used to use. Obviously, you can dig into some of these tools and not only look at vulnerabilities, but look at events and history regarding certain events that took place that were potential breaches of security or spillages or what have you, right? Regarding blockchain, I'm not going to lie. It's not so much, you see a lot of vulnerabilities that are user related, right? You're going to have in any system or any network, you're always going to have vulnerabilities there, from small to extreme. But a lot of these things can be avoided outside of focusing on some of the tools or deterrent that can protect against some of these threats. A lot of this stuff is common sense, right? For example, we'll use exchanges, right? An exchange, if you don't initiate an action through an exchange, they're never going to send you an email to reset your password, right? Like now, if you've done it through the exchange application, they may send you something to confirm, right? But if you didn't do that, don't click on an email from an exchange because it's probably fake, right? And hackers have ways of either, sending out mass phishing attempts just to see who bites, or knowing who has an account on an exchange and they're trying to get a hold of your information, right? Mm-hmm. So I think when it comes to cybersecurity, blockchain security, or, you know, just OPSEC and InfoSec in general, knowing how to protect yourself is paramount, and it's first and foremost, right? For example, your seed phrases. You have a cold wallet. Don't take a picture of them, because it's likely going to be uploaded to your cloud, especially if you have an Android, which requires you to link a Google account, right? So you do that, and then you fall victim to a phishing attack or some sort of a localized vulnerability on your device that you're doing your crypto banking on. Now they have access to that device, right? Because you clicked on something ridiculous, or, you know, you open yourself up to attack, and now, by the way, your seed phrases are on the cloud while they have possession over your device. They're going to, you know, mosey around in there and see that, go out and purchase a device and implement your keys on a new one without you knowing, and now your crypto's right? Like, so, like, I'm not going to get into the security tools that, you know, would likely be used on some of these systems, or even on our systems, because that's going to go over people's heads. Yeah. What I am going to say, and to address this now, look, all right, I'm not going to mention this person's name, because I'm not going to throw shade at this guy, because he's not here to defend himself. But I will say this: there is a gentleman out there who's waving his Security Plus in everyone's face and saying that he's a cybersecurity expert because of it. And he's recommending that people shift over to secure Web3 wallets, aka hot wallets, versus cold wallets, and saying that they're more secure. All right.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to respectfully say I would not follow that advice. All right. Because hot wallets, while useful, I think Zum, well, now it's Zaman, but it used to be Zum, would probably be the only one that I'd fool around with and have hypothetically fooled around with. But any of the rest of them that are not directly connected to a native blockchain, I wouldn't trust, because it's open to vulnerabilities 24/7. You're connected to the internet, you are subject to attack. And having a cold storage device that's used and managed and purchased properly is going to yield you far greater security than a hot wallet, in my humble opinion. Now, maybe things could change down the road, but I'm old-fashioned, okay? And I like my little Faraday bag, and I like my, you know, hypothetical D6 wallet that I purchased directly from the site, not a third party from Amazon that could have unpackaged it, compromised it, repackaged it, and sent it to me. And you see where I'm going? Like, these are the things that, from a security perspective, that need to be looked at first, right? You get those things in order, you're going to be okay. So,
and what do they always say? We are, whether you're at work or at home, we are the security threat. Our own actions, because we are silly Sallys and click on things, and, you know, we don't take the time to educate ourselves on the proper security measures that we need to have in place, and even learn why you need to not do that, right? And so, you know, educating yourself on proper procedures, and not making it easy for yourself to make those types of mistakes. Like, you know, even a clean email that you haven't signed up for every coupon website out there, with potential for them to be sending you emails that you're clicking links on, you know, that sort of thing. I think it's really important. And so, just like employees at work, you know, I always hear at my work, it's not the network that is the problem. It's, or, you know, that's not safe. It's all of the employees that are clicking those links, and, you know, or plugging things in, clicking links, visiting compromised websites and the like, you know. And so, you know, if we just are a little bit more careful, a lot of those problems will go away, because it's kind of a similar problem that you have for your regular bank accounts now, right? It's not different, really.
Not really.
Yeah.
Except for you're using a custodian to hold your money in a bank that is pretend kind of, but that's a whole nother story. You're so I know that we're at 8:45. I want to get to some of these other questions that I know a lot of people are asking. And by the way, we have 230 of you guys watching Dip a Toe Show tonight. Thank you so much. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Get us to 1,000 subscribers. Share this out with your family and friends. We appreciate you so much. You are a pretty big advocate of and have a deep interest in XRP. I wondered what makes XRP stand out in the digital asset space to you, especially when it comes to global finance. What makes XRP and XRP Ledger so special to you? Is it special to you? I should ask first.
There's several different protocols that I'm fond of. XRP and the XRP Ledger are a part of that. Like I said, I started covering it as I learned about it, because I knew it was highly disruptive, right? And I knew it was disruptive based off of the research that I've done. And I've covered this before, the story when I did my research and I saw here's the thing, right? Let me sit up.
Welcome to Dip a Toe, Tease.
Before I went down the crypto rabbit hole, the first thing that I did was I researched how the current legacy system operated, right? Meaning I researched Swift and their core fin messaging type. I researched pre-funding and how it worked. Nostro Vostro. I researched the US dollar's role as the dominant world reserve currency. Several macroeconomic factors, history behind some of the issues that the World Bank and the IMF had touched on even back in the 90s regarding cross-border payments, remittances, security, the whole nine, right? And then upon doing the historical research regarding our legacy system, and then going into the blockchain sphere, and looking at some of the testing that was done by your traditional powerhouses like HSBC, the Royal Bank of Canada, Santander, and others, which are actually a part of R3. Now, when I say a part of R3, it's not R3 is a conglomerate, a private conglomerate that builds privatized or permissioned ecosystems for institutions, right? Member banks are just that. They're banks that are members of the R3 consortium. They're not R3 themselves. So I want to make that clear before I go any further. Now, with that being said, those R3 member banks, and I found this out pretty early in my research, they tested XRP as a Nostro account replacement to see what it would do, and how it would transmit value, eliminating pre-funded accounts, right? And to my surprise, it worked almost flawlessly for those institutions. Now, there's another conversation to be had about what we touched on prior about those inefficiencies that are seen in public blockchain environments, and even things like TPS, right? You have databases within the traditional system and systems that can transmit a lot more than 1,500 TPS, right? So
that's transactions per second, yes?
Yeah, yes, TPS, transactions per second. So even with that being said, right, the fact that it was tested successfully outside of all of the other technological conflicts that you could see trying to marry these two environments, i.e. the traditional legacy system and the blockchain DLT environments. I seeing that, that long ago was kind of like, whoa, like, so you would think that if your traditional legacy institutions use this and it was successful, that they'd say, hey, we want to push the green light on this, and we want to go ahead with this and start adopting it. But I think the problem came into play with it being a crypto-based system. And at that time, and I actually touched on this on stage with Jake Claver, shout out to him. The narrative at the time behind blockchain and crypto was down with the banks, right? So I think the banks kind of implemented that strategy, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. So they saw something that, hey, this could compete with us. Let's test it and see just how well it could compete with us, and could it put us out of business? And I think once they did that and they saw that it could, there was a pause button hit, right? And I could go down the rabbit hole, and put my tinfoil hat on and talk about some of my conspiracy theories.
Hold on, I got mine around here somewhere. Hold on, let me get mine. Just kidding.
I personally would like to hear at least one conspiracy theory on this episode.
Well, I don't know. I don't know how much of a conspiracy theory it is. Maybe it's a conspiracy fact that these institutions leverage regulatory agencies and weaponize them against disruptive fintech companies, so that these companies wouldn't circumvent their bottom line, right? You can't have something that comes into play out of nowhere that none of them control, that's essentially going to circumvent their bottom line for how they make their money regarding fees, with these subservient slave-like contractual relationships that they have with smaller institutions underneath them. And when I say underneath them, by them, I mean the correspondent banks, your JP Morgans, your Goldman Sachs, etc. Right? So, when you got these guys making up almost 75% of, message traffic within Swift's ecosystem, you're not going to want to see something come along that could potentially disrupt that and put them out of business, so to speak. So,
not to mention countries, right? Being able to control the smaller countries through the banking as well, and currency, giving them the option of not using the old traditional banking, or however, being controlled in that way. This whole setup, if done correctly, gives them a little bit more freedom, and level playing field on the world stage. Would you agree with that, or am I way off base there?
No, I don't think you're way off base, and theoretically that could happen, right? You could even see nations that are, they have high numbers regarding their unbanked populace that can use blockchain and distributed ledger technology to circumvent a traditional banking system, right? Yep. The thing is that we have to understand is that the banks will never let that happen. I want people to understand that, unfortunately, the way our ecosystem is set up globally regarding banks, they always win. And they will bring the house down literally to make sure that they win. Now, another conspiracy theory of mine that I have is that what you could ultimately see in the end is integration by force, meaning that fintech companies are squeezed so hard by the traditional banking cabal that they have no choice but to relinquish a portion of that control over to the correspondent banking giants. And you see these mechanisms going live on some of these chains like XLS30D, for example, with automated market makers and global public liquidity pools. You can become a liquidity contributor and then harness the arbitrage activity and make money off of those arbitrage events within the pools, to keep it basic. I've always had a conspiracy theory that once the banks learn how to fully, well, I wouldn't say fully, but how to have majority control over this ecosystem, that they will likely become the majority contributors to environments like this, which means more than likely they're going to go out there and probably acquire the assets associated with these type of mechanisms, right? And when you see that happen, I'm not going to throw price talk out there like that, but things will change. And I think that's what we're looking at here. It's a tug of war, and the banks, like I said, they're so deeply ingrained into our history and infrastructure that you're not going to see private fintech companies take over as banks. If anything, like I said, you'll see integration, or in some cases you'll see takeovers, right? Like you may see banks start to acquire exchanges and utilize the pre-existing infrastructure and benefit off of that. And maybe some of these exchanges that they acquire, maybe they end up acquiring some of their assets as well, right? Like we won't know until these things happen. But yeah, that's kind of always been my thoughts behind where we go in the future, and why you're not seeing an environment yet where banks are settling on chain. Now they're getting there, and it won't just be banks, right? I think we're pigeonholing ourselves to look at this only from a banking perspective. There are companies and organizations outside of hedge funds and banks and market makers that do business for banks regarding foreign exchange and a myriad of other facets that are also going to contribute to the growth and demand for a lot of these assets that are left standing after we have clarity and legislation, at least what we need to see in order for this space to flourish properly. But like I said, I don't think it happens without the banks being able to assert a certain amount of control regarding this. So yeah.
To your point there that you're making, the bank's always winning. Banks are like pretty much integrated into our society. Like they're almost impossible to force them out, in a way. But going to the control side, institutions or companies like, say, BlackRock, Fidelity, just to name a couple, they're very good at letting something go, see how it operates, and then, okay, we can't create it, but we're just going to take a stakeholder's position in it. And that's how they can, that's one strategy that they implement, and how they control or have a footing. I'll just call it a footing in a specific sector, and then they continue to grow from that position.
Ripple did something similar with some of their acquisitions, right? It's control via acquisition.
Yeah.
You look at Medico, and I mean, for heaven's sake, man, Hidden Road. I mean, come on, man. It's a freaking DTCC plugin. All right. They're using a subsidiary of the DTCC to plug in to be able to settle securities on the back end with that thing. Like that the Hidden Road is. Yeah, you were absolutely right.
Same play,
exactly
right? The play works both ways, man. Yeah, the play works both ways. That's the cool thing, I think, for those of us in this space. We're seeing, that strategy being used. I wouldn't say against them, but definitely not in favor for them, at least in that one instance. You know what I mean? But for Ripple, definitely, hats off to you. Well done.
Well, and it always happens too, where you have the private companies building these things, right? Outside of, like, say, even government or just even big banks, like, to be able to even have certain things being built that are not on folks' radar, and then seemingly come out of nowhere, and then the next thing you know, a company like Ripple buys them up, and I can see like there's a lot of things being built across the board for, like you said, Tease, it's not just banks, there's all kinds of things being built right now, companies being built that I can see easily getting, bought up, and whether they buy them up to make them go away, or they truly are going to use what's being built. The question is, the folks that are building, there's a lot of like the freedom fighters and that are trying to build the infrastructure so people can be sovereign and not have to rely on a big bank and that sort of thing. And at the end of the day, it's going to come to whether or not they hold on to that, or if they sell out, right? Because I could see the big banks and corporations that have the money come knocking at your door with that money to say, like, we want to buy this from you. And it gets sold, then what happens? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think, like I said earlier, I think the control by acquisition thing is going to happen. It's going to be, it's going to be like the Borg from Star Trek. You will be assimilated. Resistance is futile. So you're going to see scenarios where they're going to come through, man, and folks are going to get bought up. And like I said, it's already happening. Like we've already seen scenarios where institutions have gone out here and taken a hold of some of these exchanges and some of this pre-existing infrastructure, so that they can integrate that into their pre-existing ecosystems. And I think you're going to continue to see that. And so it'll eventually be, maybe a consolidated environment where you have like a few powerhouse institutions that went out there and acquired some of this infrastructure for themselves, right? And that's going to save them time in having to build out that type of ecosystem on their own, right? So yeah, I mean, money talks, and I definitely think that that's going to become a thing, and it already is a thing. We're just going to probably see it on a larger scale in the not so distant future.
What are you thinking about the importance of folks buying into these assets? Not financial advice, guys. This show is not financial advice. You got to do your own research and ask your own questions. This question is mine, Melissa's question to Tease, is, I've often heard, like, you want to buy the real asset now, whether it's, XRP or Bitcoin or XTC or any of these types of things, because as the consolidation happens, the scarcity will be even greater than it is now. And, it's often said the chance for you to buy into these and get and obtain the real asset itself outside of an ETF or the products that they're fighting so hard for. What do you think will happen with those of us that have actually gotten into them early like this? How important is it for people to give this their attention and dip their toe right now?
I think it's very important. And if you want my opinion on what happens regarding the people who got in super early and held on and hold on, you're going to make a lot of money. Okay. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. You're going to make a lot of money. All right. Now, how much money are you going to make? I can't predict that, but I know you're going to make a lot of money, because when I was doing content on XRP back in 2019, 2020 timeframe, and people jumped in at 18 cents and maybe got 50 to 60,000 XRP, you made quite a bit of money, and you didn't have to spend that much to make it. Okay. I know that some of my perspectives on where I think we can end up in a 10-year period baffle people. I know people think I'm wrong. I know people, may not fully agree with my perspectives. And I just want to say I that's okay, right? You don't have to agree with me. You don't have to think that there's going to be a high enough demand to create a scarcity catalyst for assets that have a high supply, right? Because that's the rebuttal that I've seen the most, right? And it's kind of turned into a semantics argument where I say circulating supply, but what I'm really getting at here is available supply regarding some of these assets, right?
Mm-hmm.
You start having these mechanisms that lock them up even outside of an escrow, right? I've had folks say, well, that won't change the circulating supply. That's fine. Maybe it'll still reflect there, but it doesn't mean that the supply that's in use and being held long term will be available. All right. This is, and I go back to this analogy because I think it's the best one to compare to something like an XRP, and that is the Hulk 181 analogy. All right. Comic books get their value from scarcity and condition. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
How in demand is it? How many people want it? What's the condition of the book? And how many were printed and how many are available? All right. Hulk 181 was the first cover appearance of Wolverine. Okay. 400,000 copies of that book were printed in 1973. By supply numbers, it is not a rare book. Okay. But with that being said, when Wolverine started to gain popularity, in the 80s and 90s, what you saw happen was a huge flow of activity on the comic market where people were acquiring 6 to 8 copies a piece of this book and they held it. All right. Now, mind you, like I said, 400,000 in comic book language is not rare by any sense of the imagination at all. That's a lot. All right. And then you have super mass produced books that are like in the million plus, like Spawn 1 and the Death of Superman, right? Mm-hmm. But anyways, with that being said, you can't go, you can't go to a convention and see one in like a 5.0 grade. By the way, the highest is a 9.9 if for CGC, if I'm not mistaken, without paying at least $2,000 for a beat up book. Okay. Mind you, there's 400,000 of it in existence. So the supply numbers will reflect that this is the amount of the book that was created, but it's not accounting for the fact that people hold them off of the available markets. In this case, i.e. your normal mom and pop comic book store. I could go into the comic book store down the street right now and take my phone and show you guys on camera. You're not going to see a Hulk 181. And when I ask him in front of you, hey, man, when you guys are going to get one in? They'll say, man, we hardly ever get those. You only see them at conventions. And then they're charging an arm, a leg, the soul of a newborn, and 2 kidneys for it. All right. So with that being said,
2 kidneys. Wow.
Yeah. Right. So with that being said, people have to realize that principles transcend into other markets, right? Like this isn't this principle that I'm talking about here can be seen in a multitude of other marketplaces, right? This can happen with something that has a high supply if there's enough demand, enough activity, enough acquisition, enough long-term holding to power certain vehicles, etc. Quincy Jones made a comment. He said, it's not really about the circulating supply. And you know what? He's right. Okay. Well, it's about the availability of the supply. And so people like to disagree with me on that point because they like to play semantics. You know what I'm saying, right? What I'm really saying is that there's going to be several different catalysts that come into play that are going to make it harder for certain bodies and entities and people to acquire it at the same rate that they can acquire it now, right? And you're going to see that with things like spot ETFs and other investment vehicles that incorporate this stuff into long-term locked up positions. And like I said, that's going to be seen outside of just an escrow function. So people can disagree with that if they want to, but scarcity usually increases value when it's correlated with demand. All right. So I happen to be in the class of people that is hedging my bets that there's going to be massive demand for it, and that there's going to be a reduction in availability for certain bodies that want to grab a hold of it. And if you have high demand correlated with low available supply, you will have an increase in value inevitably, right? This isn't rocket science. I think people are just making this more convoluted than what it has to be.
You know what's popped into my head, and that could be way off base, but I think XRP in particular could be used for many different things. One thing that I'm really starting to see a push for is borrow against your XRP. Put your XRP out and take loans out against it, much like they do with Bitcoin, right? And like you said, with it getting locked up. So the more that these types of companies push to use XRP as something that you can borrow against, right? Why it would behoove them for XRP to be a higher price, and the scarcity will come through locking it up just from that little part, of people doing, putting their XRP to work for them, or their Bitcoin, or some of these other coins too. I just wondered, like, am I way off base on that? Because I see in the last, like, I don't know, maybe month, I'm really seeing a lot of chatter about, you can borrow, you can put your XRP here and take a loan against it, much like they did with Bitcoin 2 or 3 years ago. And then, a lot of people actually lost their Bitcoin because they were doing that. They were putting loans against their Bitcoin, and they didn't have it set up properly, and they lost their Bitcoin because they didn't have the money to shore it up, right? And I see them doing the same thing with XRP. And so I just wondered, with things like that, do you see that coming into play, adding to the potential scarcity of an asset like XRP?
Yeah. You're talking about DeFi and collateralization, basically. Yeah, that's well, and here's the thing, right? Because you're going to have certain platforms, and I've touched on this before. You're going to have platforms that actually pay out dividends, so to speak, or interest in the form of the asset itself. You can't do that as an institution if you don't hold a reserve pool of it, right?
That's
so, right. I mean, what? You're going to be, hey, this institution wants to offer you fiat for your crypto. Well, here, if you loan us your crypto and let us put it to work for you, we'll pay you a certain amount of interest in the form of your favorite cryptocurrency, or the one that you're lending to us. Which one's going to sound more attractive to the crypto sphere, right? So in order to do that as an institution, you're going to have to hold some of the asset, right? And you're not going to use every last bit of what you have in a pool to pay out interest benefits to your clientele, right? So that's another scarcity catalyst that I don't think people are even realizing is going to come at some point, right? Or, like I've said before, in the event that, because catastrophes happen, they happen in traditional banking. How many times have people walked by someone in a shady store and got their card info lifted, looked in their bank account, and they have $3,000 missing, and then they have to go to the bank and file a claim. They do an investigation for fraud, and when they prove that it's fraud, they reimburse your account with the same amount of fiat that was taken. You don't think that's going to happen in the crypto space, or that there's going to be a demand for it at some point, then in my opinion, you are way behind on the power curve. And that is going to be another catalyst regarding scarcity and demand for the asset from major institutions that know that people are going to say, I don't want your stupid fiat. I want my crypto if something happens to my crypto. And if you can't give it to me, then I'm going to go to freaking Dubai somewhere where they're going to offer me that, and you'll be out of business before you can blink an eye. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So Look, all right. I don't think people are using their imaginations enough, and I don't think they're thinking big enough, right? I think we have a ton of smart minds in this space, some of the most brilliant people that I've come across, but some of them are so linear and so closed-minded in what they're smart about that they can't see a possibility outside of what they know to currently be. You have to be able to think beyond that to be successful in a space like this. If I would have listened to the pundits when XRP was at 26 cents, then dropped to 18 cents and stayed there for God knows how long, and then jumped up to 25 cents and stayed there for how long, and then went to 30 cents and stayed in between that and 50 cents for years, I would have screwed myself. Listening to the people who said, well, because this is what the current environment is right now, you're never going to see those numbers again per the previous all-time high regarding this asset, right? And this is another example that I've used. And I'm not saying XRP is Amazon, but what I'm saying is that you have to be willing to accept the possibility that things evolve, change, and grow over time. And if you don't accept that, you will never be successful in any investment space that you're in.
Anything. You won't be successful in anything.
If I would have accepted the limitations from my upbringing and the things that I went through in my childhood and just said, I'm just destined to be a nobody, I wouldn't be where I'm at now. I wouldn't be talking to you guys now. People have to learn to break the shackles behind linear thinking. Now, I'm not saying don't be responsible and conservative within your thoughts, but no one, and look, let's be honest here, no one saw Amazon going from a freaking bookstore to an e-commerce giant over $3,000 a share.
Nope.
Nobody saw that. Not even Bezos himself and his wife saw that at the time when they started this. Okay. This is what I'm talking about. All right. When you see these major bodies giving out awards for the most disruptive technologies, and you see some of these companies that we're talking about and assets associated with these companies being listed, you better jump on it, because it's not going to be, today's price will not be tomorrow's. Okay. No. And we're looking at an environment, and I think people forget that we are looking at an environment right now where none of this stuff it's not even being used, for heaven's sake. That you tell me one major bank that's using public blockchains regarding stablecoins. Hell, they just passed stablecoin legislation, not that long ago, right? So we're not even in an environment yet to see this stuff even being used. And people are already throwing in the towel, and I'm just like, you guys have no patience, or you're stubborn and you're set in your ways, and that's going to hurt a lot of people in the future.
Yeah,
100%. You know, to your big point you're talking about there about the circulating supply and availability. Okay, here's something that all of us learned in elementary school, at least in elementary school, and it continued on into our science. Okay, we have water. Water covers the earth. True. Whether that's round or flat, I don't care. How much is drinkable / usable in our everyday life comparative to the mass? Now, granted, I could go to my tap, I can flip it up, put it through some other technologies, filters, and I can drink it. It's there. It's granted. It's right there. It's not granted. I go to a grocery store during a 2020 snafu. Guess what's gone? Toilet paper. And water.
Water. Yep.
Right? Water. I need water. Right? And so that's a correlation to where circulating supply. Hey, how much water's out there? It's plenty. Earth's got it all. We're going to get a rain cloud come through. Talk to the people that were in the Dust Bowl in the Midwest back in our history books. They didn't get a rain cloud. They suffered. Right? Same thing. Don't miss the boat.
Don't miss the boat.
Don't miss the boat. Have patience. Start stacking your water. because one day it can benefit you. Not just, hey, I need to wet my whistle. Maybe need to water a garden.
It's
Maybe you
so
need to clean
funny.
off a tool. I mean, there's so many uses for water. But anyways, I digress on that.
It's so funny during my conspiracy theory days. One of the
theories.
when I feel like God led me to Ripple and well, not Ripple, because I didn't know about Ripple. God led me to XRP. Then I found out about Ripple and all the other stuff. I didn't even know about Ripple. But the funny thing was, once I did find out, in my conspiracy days, there was always the phrase "watch the water." And when I came across XRP, I was like, watch the water. Holy smokes. That's what it means. Watch the water, because it just, I don't know. That's always resonated with me when we talk about it, and liquidity and all of these things, all of the terms that you use when we're talking about transitioning the financial system over, and even some of the terms for, your computer and IT stuff, all these little hints and tips that people seemingly put out in the public, out in the open, that are seemingly unrelated, but my conspiracy mind puts all these little dots together, and I'm just like, oh, I see. But you are so passionate about XRP, like you're just talking about it, and I can see you are very passionate about it. What actually makes it stick out? Like how does, in your opinion, how does the XRP ledger compare to other blockchains? In as compared to like terms of speed and cost and scalability and potential financial use cases and all of that kind of stuff. What makes this XRP ledger and XRP in particular so special to you?
So number one, I think it's age and history. People like things, especially banks and financial entities, that have been around for a while with a proven track record. Okay. Mm-hmm. I am not a maximalist, even though the XRP ledger and token and the technology that surrounds that ecosystem, I'm a big fan of it. There are things out there. Hell, if you want to talk about transactions per second, Hedera's Gossip Protocol blows the XRP ledger out of the water in terms of speed, right? But what I like about the technology is, number one, the native decentralized exchange, right? If you're talking about, if you're going to compare it to another chain, right, we can use ERC20, which, I mean, I'm not going to say anything bad about it outside of it's expensive. But with that being said, most protocols, almost all of them, use a third-party source for their decentralized exchanges. Meaning, for example, ERC20 has Uniswap, right? That's not native to ERC20, which opens it up potentially to several security issues, all right? This goes back to some of the conversations I've had with folks about these cold wallets and using things like Decent to perform token swaps to get a hold of something that's hard to come by or hard to purchase because you may not have access to a certain exchange, and opening your cold wallet up to a third-party application to swap for another token without realizing that you've now made your cold wallet vulnerable, right? Well, the same thing can hold true in environments like that, where you have an entire blockchain relying on another application that's not native to its protocol, right? So with that being said, these guys can't go out there and control fully all of the variables within Uniswap, right? Now, they have their own pool of devs, I'm sure, that can implement certain things, but, you know, this is where the trust aspect, I think, comes into play with something like the XRP ledger. And as you see legislation and regulations continue, at least here in the United States and elsewhere, for that matter, I think that chain will likely be one of the major ones in compliance because it has something like that built-in DEX that's actually native to its protocol. It lives there. It was built there. And that shows for these other institutions that choose to engage in it, reliability. I can remember my little nerdy days back on Quora years ago, looking at some of these technologies and having conversations with people who were using stuff like Uniswap and Pancake and some of these other third-party DEXs, and they were complaining nonstop about the cost or the scalability or how slow it was, or sometimes they weren't seeing their transactions go through. You're probably not going to see that on something like the XRPL where it's native, right? So for starters, that has me excited, right? And I'll be the first one to say, that does it have the most features in the world? I mean, not yet, right? And I think that's by design. It's not my favorite because it can do everything incredibly well. It's my favorite because it knows what it can do and it does that well, right? And it's been consistent and it's been tried and it's been proven. And I think I look beyond Ripple when I'm looking at XRP and the XRP ledger. I think Ripple gets a lot of attention because David Schwartz is one of the creators of that architecture regarding the XRP ledger. So with him being affiliated with the company, naturally there's and them leveraging the XRP ledger and token, there's an automatic correlation between the two. But you have to look beyond Ripple and look at all the other businesses and industries that could see benefit in leveraging a technology like that. The exchange aspect and the foreign exchange integration that you're likely going to see with something like that, because that's what it's mimicking essentially. When you start talking about these multiple institutions out here, and folks are using this as a FUD point to say, oh, well, they're just going to build their own stable coins. They're not going to use RLUSD, or they're not going to use the XRP ledger. Well, we can look no further than JPM coin, right? And the Onyx blockchain settler. Now, they have their own settlement mechanism and they have their own coin, so to speak, right? How in the world is that coin that they have going to transmit value to Bank of America? Bank of America doesn't use a JPM coin. What if Bank of America doesn't adopt a private blockchain based on ERC20 technology? That means that they're not going to be able to just rely on smart contract application to transmit value between them and that institution using different stablecoin types and different blockchain types, right? At some point, you're going to need some sort of an intermediary with systems like that that are different from one another, that reside in different environments and ecosystems to be able to transmit that value, right? And I think that's where something like an XRP would become useful, right? Being able to, you know, the cliche talk about it having that bridge currency capability, right? I think you see and look, all right, it ain't just going to be XRP in the fold, right? This is why I stress cross-chain communication and multiple layers of that communication so much, because I think you see it on several different layers between several different chains, right? I think they're all going to play a part, as well as OS-based ecosystems that interconnect enterprise environments to the chain itself, right? For use, not just secure data exchange or oracles, right? i.e. CCIP via Chainlink, right? And even then, you'd see interoperability between Swift's messaging system or ecosystem and other public blockchains regarding that secure data exchange and oracles, right? So that's kind of what I'm looking at. And I think XRP, because of its capabilities, it does, you know, obviously, you know, we hear the 1500 TPS, but look, I haven't seen that at scale from a high value payment institutional level yet, right? Like I haven't seen this live with JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs interoperating their clientele's messages via Swift through a CCIP, interconnecting it to something like the XRP ledger to say that it can move at that scale or higher, even coupled with payment channels and things like interledger protocol, even if it were to interoperate with Overledger. We haven't seen that in a real-time environment yet. So I don't know fully from a speed capability what that would look like, right? Outside of a test environment. And I don't work, in those dev test beds. So I'm not seeing what they're seeing or some of the stuff that they've seen outside of going to GitHub and looking at some of the code, right? From some of the projects that have been launched. But I do think it will, because of its capabilities, I have faith that with evolution and growth, there will come demand with some of the beneficial features that it has built in natively to the chain that I can't see a reason why in time, once institutions find a way to be able to control a good portion of this, that they won't leverage it and benefit from it.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it seems like like the institutions themselves, like, there's the difference. People always talk about the public and private, chains, right? Where, well, this is what I'm wondering, Tease. In a situation of a bank, right? And how you say like JP Morgan has their own coin, their own token that can work within JP Morgan. People don't really want everybody seeing what they're doing with their JP Morgan token, right? And at the end of the day, whatever needs to be settled on chain, where everybody in the public, where they could use an XRP to exchange, right? If they, between blockchains or whatever. Could it be that, XRP ledger doesn't mean not, depending on, I guess price and all of that that comes into play, where the transaction per second may not, it's not like they need it to be doing, thousands and thousands and thousands of transaction per second. If they're swapping batches between banks, say, or whatever. I don't know if I'm phrasing my question right.
Are you talking about batch processing?
Maybe. I mean, my mind just kind of went to like the bank is handling their stuff in the private, so that your customer stuff is not all open out to the public for everybody to see, and then they can, whatever they need to settle on the other end, they could use like an XRP in between. But I don't know if I'm saying it correctly.
So years ago, I actually drew a little diagram. I mean, outside of the whiteboard videos, I actually, made a Word doc or a Microsoft Paint doc where like I made a picture of what that could look like. And excuse me, you could see a scenario where there are, countries that may not be in the same conglomerate with one another. For example, Russia and the United States, right? Maybe Russia doesn't want the US dollar, right? So maybe they have their own private blockchains, right? And maybe this blockchain is based on this tech and this blockchain is based on this tech. Maybe it's not the same technology, right? But maybe what you see end up happening is those two different technologies can plug into the XRP ledger via sidechain interop, right? And when they do that, obviously within a sidechain environment, the blockchain's native token is used, but not in its pure form. So it would be like a wrapped version of the token that's transmitted, but it would nonetheless still be native. And what you would have to see in that type of an environment, if those two have different technologies, they're plugged into a mainnet via a sidechain, and they use XRP as an exchange mechanism. Like I said earlier, since Russia doesn't want the US dollar, they want to be paid in their currency. You would essentially need something that, if they want an instant settlement, that could instantaneously convert that one currency over to another, so that when they're paid in the ruble, right, instead of USD. Right. With that being said, in order for that to happen, those two entities would have to go out into the XRP ledger and lock up a portion of whatever they were going to be using regarding that transaction off of the mainnet, right? So yes, to your point, you could see a scenario where that happens, right? And I think solutions like Interledger and a lot of other technological work behind the scenes regarding integration into these traditional databases and systems that already exist will likely at some point negate the confines of TPS, right? Like, I think with a solution like Interledger and others interoperating with one another, because it won't just be Interledger by itself, I think you see other protocols or other systems correlating with something like an Interledger, where you and I know I'm going to get hit by the semantics police if I say this wrong. So this is just me. I know it's coming, right? Like I know, I absolutely know it's going to happen, right? So am I saying that developers are going to go into the XRP ledger itself and increase the TPS within the ledger solely? No, but I think the interoperating between multiple systems and those type of platforms that essentially interconnect everything will increase scalability and speed overall regarding these transactions across multiple networks.
Man.
Yep.
Guys, it's 9:36 or something like this. So we've got 20 minutes left. We got a bunch of questions. It's gonna be kind of like rapid fire.
Okay.
I mean, like, so but before we do, I just want to give a shout out to Crypto for Life 68J. Thank you, my friend. We love you. He says, great show, you guys. And also, who else? There was another one in there somewhere. Team Green, love the value you guys continue to bring week in and week out. Big shout out for T, always keeping it 100. Yeah, he always does, you guys. There were some questions in here. I don't know if I want to go down this road, Toasty. You can quickly respond or not. He says, does Ripple applying for that Fed Master account have Caitlin Long, CEO of Custodia Bank, mad? Is that why she recently crapped all over the XRPL? And I know what video that he's talking about. And one thing I will say, Caitlin Long has been trying to get their own. She was one of the first, or if not the first, to ask, and she's been patiently
for a Fed
waiting.
Master account.
Yes, and so I can understand her frustration. And so before even looking at the video, that was going to be my response. But then when I heard what she said, I was like, well, that's unfortunate. Some of her comments. But I think Caitlin Long's a very smart person, and I'll just say that. What's your rapid response to that, Tease?
No comment.
No comment. Yep. Thank you.
That was smart.
Yeah.
No comment. That was smart.
I appreciate it. Toasty, I did you 100 to try. And then his other question is, have you heard about Mad Labs from Zoj? Classy Zoj is on. We've had him on this show. He's been diligently building. I don't know if you've ever played with the Mad Labs wallet. And if not, I would love for you to check it out.
I will, and I think he and I follow each other, if I'm not mistaken. So
I would love to hear you guys in a room together talking.
I think we do. I'll have to take a look and see.
Yeah. I think you already addressed this, but quickly, Atlantic Living wanted to know, Tease, when did you know about XRP? What was the single greatest light bulb moment for you?
I learned about XRP a few years ago, 2018, 2019 timeframe, somewhere around there. And the light bulb moment for me was the R3 member bank testing and regarding the Nostro account replacement and how well it went. And that let me know, okay, that's pretty disruptive. if what I'm seeing here is true. And then obviously that correlating with the fact that they already have a built-in DEX native to the ledger, just yeah. I was like, okay, yeah, this is going to be one of the ones. Like I said, what really made me center in on it was the lawsuit, because I knew people were going to sell prematurely and be terrified of it, and I didn't want to see people lose out. So that's why I started doing content, and that was pretty much the start of my light bulb moment.
Simon, you want to take this one?
Who supplies the OTC market for banks, ETCs to buy from? When does that run out? Ooh, well,
that's a tough question.
Well, okay. Honestly, that's whoever they have the relationship with. I mean, we are aware that Ripple, specifically to XRP, Ripple is currently still the escrow of XRP, and it releases it onto the market. But how does it release it onto the market? Where does it go? That's a whole nother discussion. So getting back to what T was talking about earlier at great depth, by the way, is circulating supply or availability. You know, how much is available out there to get? Question one. Question two, are you in a position to even get some? And that's what you really should be looking at. So tough question though there, Melissa.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that, T?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure. I to be honest, I don't know. Right? Like I don't know when that supply would run out. And to be honest, go ahead.
Sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
Do you know the legend?
Sean?
Sean. He actually did a calculation based 2 years ago, because we've been to XRP Las Vegas twice now. Okay, so just before that, he did a calculation. I don't remember what it was, but he did some hypothetical calculation where it was like, I think we had 8 years from that point going forward, so 6, based on just the release of escrow.
Okay,
that's what he was taking into consideration. Simple, easy math. I was like, oh wow.
Now here's the thing with the release of the escrow. The escrow that's released, what is it, 1 billion a month?
Yep.
That's reallocated back to Ripple, whatever is it used, right? So is that calculation based off of what on average is repurchased by Ripple and then stored back in the escrow?
So that I don't know, but I know he did write a paper on that, just highlighting that. But we're talking, it was a one-page deal. So, but that's a very important fact too, to see that in real time on chain.
Yeah, because I'm wondering if he's referring to basically stating that the escrow itself will run out completely, or does it still remain the escrow and he's talking about the available supply that exchanges and everyone else can get a hold of. I'll have to look at that. If someone can, DM me a link on that, I'd like to check that paper out and see his thoughts. That'd be pretty cool.
That's the Baron of Beach Street, by the way.
I know who that is.
Yeah.
Oh, you know who he is? Okay. All right.
Yeah, I know who he is.
Baron
all right.
Beach
Yeah.
Street.
Sorry.
Yeah, he's the one. All right. Rapid fire questions. How close are we to seeing a fully decentralized financial system in action? What's a realistic timeline based on what you're seeing? That's a tough one.
I have an idea, but it's tough because it's not going to be what people want to hear.
Yeah.
A fully decentralized system, first of all, it'll never be fully decentralized because you'll always have centralized entities that correlate with decentralized networks. For example, Ripple, the company, is a centralized ecosystem, but the XRP ledger itself is decentralized. So you're going to probably have relationships like that across the space where you see a correlation of decentralized and centralized systems interoperating with one another. Now, in terms of when do we see a fully blockchain based environment where banks and institutions are settling their payments on chain regularly, and this becomes the new norm, and then on top of that you have an environment where retail users are using applications that leverage blockchain technology without even knowing it. And like I said, folks aren't going to want to hear this, but I have to be honest, from a tech perspective, I give it a decade.
Okay. 10 years.
I give
10 years.
give it about 10 years.
That's
when
fair.
you see widespread utilization, like to that level, to the point where everyone's touching it. Like, I don't think that's going to happen overnight.
No, I mean, they've been working on it for years already, and look, we are further down the road than most people realize, yet there's still a ways to go, right? And I always say on the show, like, think about implementing some even new software in your company where you have to transition everybody over. They'll say we're going to do this and that, and it's many years down the road before it ever really happens. Yep. And then getting the people all on board with it and everything, it's quite a challenge to do that. And so when you think about transitioning the entire world, the global financial system, it's a big beast. So with that in mind, what do you see are the biggest hurdles as far as tech and regulatory and otherwise standing in the way of full blockchain adoption in say finance? Like, what are the things that are going to make that 10 years, maybe even 20 years?
Egotistical maniacs and a desire for control and narcissism in the space. Simply put.
Yep. That's it.
Look, all right, you got validators that can't even get along and come to a common goal or solution on an amendment that's going to benefit the chain somehow, right? Mm-hmm. Let's start there. Let's not even start talking about the desire of control and power regarding hedge funds, Wall Street, the banks, etc. And then the geopolitical factors, when you start talking about who stands to benefit what, who's being lobbied by the banks, who's got the banks in their pockets telling them, don't do this or don't allow this when it comes to legislation, or don't do that, or there's so many variables here that it's gonna basically come down to, like I said, control and power. And the people who are doing the work on chain have got to get better with communicating with one another regarding ledger-specific amendments and things that are going to evolve and further growth regarding these ecosystems, in my opinion. So if we can come to some sort of an agreement in those spaces and get the technological side of the house built out and fully functional, then it just means that when those who desire control or who are already in control finally discover how they're going to fully benefit and control this new ecosystem, the tech's already done. And then it becomes plug and play at that point. But when you have those guys arguing and things can't get fully figured out on a technological innovation standpoint, and then you have Congress and the rest of our regulators not seeing eye to eye on things or being bought by the wrong people, and having conflicting interests, that doesn't make for the best scenario in terms of widespread adoption and utilization, right? Mm-hmm. So hopefully we see an end to that type of behavior. People grow up and mature and start collaborating more with one another and getting these things done, not just on a technological plane, but the geopolitical side as well, right? So hopefully we see that, and I'm here for it.
It's funny, you're talking and the first thing that pops in my head is sandbox, right? Like, play together well in the sandbox. And I don't remember. There is something to do with Sandbox in the crypto space that I came across a couple of years ago and whatever. And so the whole time you're talking, I'm thinking of like play together well in the sandbox. And at the end of the day, because a lot of these narratives where they're fighting and all this stuff is going on open in the public, and it's kind of slowing things down, which kind of fosters lowers the expectation of the public that we are going to be in full implementation tomorrow, right? It kind of brings everybody back down to earth because they're like, hey, these guys still over here are still fighting and whatever. But at the end of the day, when does daddy put his foot down and say, enough, this is coming together, right? There's got to be like some overseeing body or entity or group of entities that say, all right, kids, enough is enough. You're all grounded. Monday morning, this is what we're doing. You know what I mean? Like, because I really think a lot of this stuff is a show. I know a lot of it's not a show, but I know there's some of it is a show.
Yeah.
And so I guess I'm just asking, who do you think daddy is, and how long are they going to let this sandbox fight go on?
I think daddy is JP Morgan.
Okay.
Big daddy is JP Morgan and mama is Goldman Sachs. And I say that because when it comes to Swift, they make up for almost 100% of CBPR plus traffic that flows across that ecosystem for their clientele and subservient banks, right? That conduct cross-border transactions and remittances through them. Most people will say, it's the IMF. And I'm not saying the IMF doesn't sit really high up on the hierarchy scale, but none of them come close to JP Morgan, in my opinion, and Goldman Sachs. They are the rulers of the global financial system. And I think once they come to an agreement and understanding as to how their bottom line isn't going to be circumvented with implementation of a system like this, because it's going to happen, all right? And I want people to know it's already happening, okay? It's just happening in slow motion, but it will come into fruition. And like I said, when they figure out a system of control to implement in this new ecosystem, then that's when you're going to start seeing what you want to see.
We've got a couple minutes left. I want to ask a couple more questions. Zips Tips has a question for you. It's kind of like out of order, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. Do you foresee a supply shock when spot ETFs are approved, causing reasonably price increase and laws fully established? I don't know if I read that correctly, but
yes and no. I think it will over time. I don't think it happens the same day that they start approving ETFs and spot ETFs, right? That's going to take some time. But I do think eventually it does lead to a supply shock regarding available supply, right? Let me make sure I don't twist my verbiage up and say circulating. So we'll just say available supply. Yes, I do think that happens in the future.
The other question, how do you see technologies like AI, smart contracts, or other interoperability protocols shaping the path to decentralization or just even interoperability even? Because I know that those are kind of two different things, but kind of
they'll work together. I actually did a video probably 3 years ago or so on that regarding Hedera's Gossip Protocol, Palantir's Foundry system, and Oracle, and the relationship between Foundry and Oracle. All my database folks know what Oracle is, and how Hedera would tie into that regarding the securitizing of that data that's analyzed and scrubbed through Palantir's Foundry ecosystem. And then you could see a scenario where other interoperable protocols, like maybe an IOTA, regarding machine learning, take that data and implement it into their systems, right? And Palantir, a lot of people don't know, also has an AI side as well, which is why Snowflake is one of their major competitors. They do indeed, outside of big data analytics, deal with artificial intelligence as well. And you could see that come into play with the market infrastructure, right, regarding crypto. You could see it regarding DLT-based systems that utilize machine learning, right? And as far as smart contracts are concerned, that's already being implemented across the board anyways. And a lot of smart contract-based protocols, mainly ERC20 and the Ethereum virtual machine, are already being integrated via sidechain interoperability into public blockchains like the Stellar blockchain or the XRP ledger, etc. Right? Even the XDC network, which is also a smart contract-based technology as well, which has a ton of different features on it. The XDC network is going to be a powerhouse, but I'll leave it at that. And if you're not following Coin Club Quincy, go follow him, because he has literally the best XDC content out there, in my opinion.
He's been on this show a couple of times. He's a friend of ours. We're looking forward to him coming back. Things are really ramping up over there. So I don't know if we'll ever get him to come on the show again, but very proud of what they're doing over there at XDC. It's very interesting, to say the least. Couple more questions, and these ones are somewhat unfair just because we don't have time to really talk about them. But I just wanted to get your quick reaction. First, what do you think of Metal blockchain and XPR and the loan protocol? Do you know anything about it? Would you recommend people look into that particular? And that is the Marshall Hayner creation, Metal blockchain.
I actually know Marshall, and we actually did a space together to kind of put an end to the infighting and discuss actual interoperability between that protocol and the XRP ledger. Do I think Metal is a quality protocol? Look, from what I've seen, I'm not gonna crap on it. All right. I still need to do a little bit more research into it. I mean, from a tokenomics perspective, XPR, I mean, it's kind of high regarding the supply, but here's the thing. I mean, the same thing can be said about XRP with 100 billion in total supply and 50 billion plus circulating, right? It's not necessarily about the circulating supply. It's about what's left available regarding the available supply, correlated with respective demand for the asset. So the question really comes down to how quality is the protocol, right? And I think Metal has potential. I will say that. Like I said, before I definitively come on here and start saying go buy Metal now or XPR now, there's still a lot of research that I would need to do. But from what I've seen on the surface regarding Metallicus, it doesn't look too bad.
Yeah, I'm dipping my toe into it myself. From what I understand, they're geared towards credit unions and also government accounting type thing for transparency
and compliance as well.
Yeah, there's somehow connected to Doge, the governance council. So in any event, I didn't even know that you had a prior thing. So otherwise, I probably wouldn't. I probably wouldn't have brought it up if I had known that. But anyway, I appreciate you sharing that. Next thing, what about this midnight and Charles Hoskins and Cardano have a new a thing called Midnight. I guess it has to do with security and interoperability, and they have an airdrop that came out yesterday that for people that hold XRP and ADA and some other things. Just curious of your quick thoughts on it. Do you know anything about it? What do you think?
I heard about the airdrop. So I'm slightly familiar with it. Regarding the protocol and what it can do, I'd have to research that. You know, I don't come on here and BS anyone. Like, if I don't know, I don't know. So I'll take a look into it. But I did see a video where Charles was talking about it in the airdrop. So I'll take a look into it and see what I can find.
Yeah, great. I'd love to hear your perspective on that in a space sometime. And sorry, Simon, I'm hogging all the questions. I guess because we only have like
30 seconds.
30 seconds left. Really, if for people that want to look into something or just dipping their toes, what are some quality projects that you think are worth people's time to give themselves a little look-see?
I'd say SHX, Metallicus is something that, but you need to do your research on that one because I haven't even fully done enough research on it yet. So Stronghold, Metallicus, Velo, Cello as well, XLM, XDC, XSP, XRP, HBAR, Quant, and I'd also say AVAX is a good one to look into as well.
All right.
Yep.
We told you kids you were gonna learn something tonight. There you got your homework. A whole bunch of projects to look into, some tokens. Tease, if people want to find you, what's the best place to connect with you?
You can find me at Tease Crypto Spot on Twitter. I'm the only one with the blue check mark, so you'll know as soon as you see me that that's the real me. YouTube, I mean, to be honest, I don't do much on YouTube anymore, but occasionally I'll pop my head in, same name. You'll know me when you see the channel. If you get on there and comment, I never ask for money. I'm not even monetized. I don't do Telegram. I'm not going to DM you asking you to set up, an appointment for anything monetary wise. So it's a scam, especially on Twitter. And like I said, I'm the only one with the blue check mark.
Awesome. Simon, any final questions?
No way. We're out of time.
We're out of time.
Because I have a Facebook with that name as well. So
Facebook, on Facebook
okay,
too. Guys, don't forget, I posted the link in the chat. We do have Dipito After Dark on X. It starts at 10:10. Tease, I know this has been a long interview. If you're so inclined, we'd love for you to join us. If not, we fully understand. But all of you, 402 people, I fully expect you to come in to the Dipito After Dark, and we will carry on this conversation. And with that, we wish you guys all a good rest of your day. Thank you so much for coming, T. We really appreciate your time, and we look forward to having you again another day.